there, if we never met before, my name's Vanilla, and if we have met before, welcome back to this little weird corner of the internet. Today I'm going to be doing my review of Pokemon Legends ZA, which makes total sense since my two favorite things are Pokemon and reviewing things. Now, if you happen to be a part of the group of folks who aren't too pleased with the release of Legends ZA, I'm just going to let you know that this isn't going to be a video of me trashing the game. I really enjoyed it personally. If you did like it, that's okay. If you're not going to buy it because you think it's bad, that's totally cool. I respect that it's not your thing, but I had a great time and that's okay too. Obviously, this whole video is going to be filled with my opinions, and I always do my best to make sure that I make it clear that my opinions are not facts. I also like to yap a lot, so if you're looking for a concise review, this is definitely not going to be that. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about Legends ZA than just the game itself. It does take me a bit of time to get through the games because I want to play through them as I would be if I were doing it on my own. I think a lot of creators prioritize getting the video out as soon as possible and then move on to the next thing, but I personally need a little bit more time to gather all of my thoughts. I love talking about Pokemon, and I want to make sure I put out something that I think is both interesting and meaningful. I think since I'm a grown adult and you are too, things get kind of weird when we start talking about Pokemon. That's kind of why I feel compelled to give a bit of a disclaimer at the beginning of my videos where I share more of my controversial opinions. And you may be thinking to yourself, it's not that big of a deal, nobody cares. Well, unfortunately, a lot of folks do care. Similar to what happened with Scarlet and Violet, there appear to be a lot of fans who are concerned about what other players are doing with their money and time. I don't know about you, but I don't appreciate seeing comments and posts that say things like, if I bought Legends ZA, that my IQ must be low, or maybe I'm not a real Pokemon fan and have zero self-respect because I'm just a little piggy eating slop fed to me by the evil multi-billion-dollar Pokemon company. That's just insane to me, all over a video game. If you defend ZA, you're not a Pokemon fan, grow a pair and critique your media. What if 90% of the things I have to say are positive? Does that mean I'm not capable of seeing that it's not a perfect game? I guess what it does mean in the eyes of some of Pokemon's disgruntled fans is that I'm a Disney adult, which is just them saying that I'm extremely childish and immature, therefore my opinion doesn't matter. My willingness to buy the slop that is Legends ZA is what's destroying gaming. Sorry about that, everyone. You can blame the downfall of everything you love on me. Pokemon games are probably one of my favorite things ever, and I want to see them continue to improve and add new things. The last thing I want to see are the same old games being released over and over again. Some folks say that Pokemon has been the exact same over the last 30 years and that nothing has changed. I think that's the last thing any of us want. Critiques aren't bad if done constructively, they help us improve, but at what point is enough enough? Does the critique only stop when it's exactly how you want the thing to be? I think some folks need to ask themselves that question. I honestly don't get it. I see a lot of folks wishing for Pokemon to go back to whichever iteration they thought was the best. Even though over the years the franchise has changed a lot, I don't find myself wishing for the series to be what it once was. That may put me in a very small minority, but I'm more than happy with things being new but somewhat familiar. That's how I would classify Legends ZA. It introduces a lot of new concepts while also bringing back old ones as well. When we are thinking about Legends ZA, a game that is our first visit back to Kalos in over a decade, we need to talk about how it looks. Legends ZA appears to be built using a similar, if not same game engine as Scarlet and Violet. This makes the games feel more connected to one another. I feel like for a while there we were getting art design whiplash between Let's Go, BDSP, Sword and Shield, and Legends Arceus. While they all looked nice in their own ways, the art direction was really different for each game. But now it feels more cohesive, and that's something that I didn't even think about before, really. I personally think Legends ZA looks very nice. Cue the angry mob outside of my house. If you don't like the way Scarlet and Violet looks, you're probably not gonna like ZA, but on the Switch 2, I think it looks great. Does it look like Digimon Time Stranger? No. Does it look like Xenoblade Chronicles? No. Does it look like Expedition 33? No. Thankfully, it's Pokemon Legends ZA because I don't have any interest in playing those other games. I have seen tons of posts that clown on ZA because it's ugly. Whether it's the fact that there are flat textures on buildings instead of mesh 3D windows and doors, or the fact that there aren't enough people populating the streets, there's something for everyone to dislike. I'm not going to take too much time to talk about the various claims that have been made about ZA's graphics because it's something I've talked about plenty of times before with Scarlet and Violet. My personal opinion is that they're not as bad as some folks say they are. I've looked at both the humanoid characters as well as the Pokemon and their animations in programs like Blender in my videos before. A lot of time and effort went into these assets, whether or not you personally think they're as good as they should be. When you consider the supposed budget that these games are running on, what they've managed to create is even more impressive in my opinion. This brings up another thing. I'm not even going to entertain the whole billion-dollar company argument. Game Freak develops the games and is a separate company from the Pokemon company, which is not the same company as Nintendo. I've already talked about all this in more detail before. Until I see documents that list all of the line items for the Pokemon company company's expenditures and income specifically, I just won't be listening to any of that. I think that Game Freak should be given a bigger budget if that's what they need to get all the ideas that they want put into one game. Allegedly, Scarlet and Violet went way over budget with the DLC, and I honestly think Teal Mask and Indigo Disc were some of the most fun I've ever had in any Pokemon game. That being said, I personally don't think ZA needed a bigger budget to be a good game. It's already really good as it is. Legend ZA fixes a lot of flaws that Scarlet and Violet had in terms of graphics. Some folks are still chanting that it's ugly. I have to disagree. I think given the fact that they had a lot more time to familiarize themselves with the custom game engine that Gen 9 uses, that they were able to improve upon a lot of things that were a bit less polished in Scarlet and Violet. I would say that one of the biggest graphical flaws in Scarlet and Violet was with the lighting engine. In places like Area Zero, the lighting could be really inconsistent. A lot of the time I felt like I was getting flashbang because the lighting was so blindingly bright, but ZA has a nice lighting system that changes as time progresses, and it looks especially pretty in the early evening. Even at night it looks distinctly nighttime, not just daytime lighting with a dark filter. Inside of places like Hotel Z, the lighting is baked, which basically means that the game doesn't need to do real-time calculations to determine shadows. It looks so good. Hotel Z is really impressive, and you can tell that a lot of thought went into designing it. There are these cute photos on the wall, and the sitting room in the lobby is especially cozy. Inside of the battle restaurants, the lighting is also baked, and they looked amazing too. Most of the textures and details look really nice on the Switch too, which is a huge positive. Unfortunately, the Switch One does struggle in this area. Just like Scarlet and Violet, you won't be able to get the exact same level of detail with textures and shadows. It still looks good, don't get me wrong, just a bit less polished. I am personally really interested in how the 3D models look and perform in the newer Pokemon games, maybe a bit too much. I think that the models, especially those for trainers, look really good in ZA. Throughout my entire playthrough, I was so stunned by how smooth the animations looked, even outside of the pre-rendered cutscenes. Although one of the most memorable things for me in Scarlet and Violet were actually the pre-rendered cutscenes. The one with Terapagos and the Indigo Disc DLC was just so impressive. The way the models react to what is going on in the cutscene, like Briar being blown back by the energy from Terapagos, is just so cool. I'll probably talk more about this later because it's going to be kind of hard to talk about ZA without a bunch of spoilers just because of how the story is structured. But when we look at the cutscenes, like the one right here at the beginning when we're saved by Floette, the same awesome animation techniques are present. If you pay careful attention to the details, you can watch the clothes move almost flawlessly with the character models, and the slight movement of the pupils when looking around gives that extra sense of realism. This is a multi-bajillion-dollar company. We shouldn't be praising this. Games like Elden Ring, Expedition 33, and Devil May Cry look so much better. I'm personally not looking to play something that's hyper-realistic, especially when it comes to Pokemon. Something about that concept just gives me the ick. I don't want Pokemon, but real life. I would honestly feel alienated from the series because that's not what Pokemon has ever been about. If that's where you think Pokemon needs to go because a more cartoonish and simplistic design isn't acceptable in 2025, I just have to say I wholeheartedly disagree. But that's not to say everything needs to stay the same as it's always been. What I don't mind that has changed quite a bit in ZA is that they've adjusted the writing and character design to be more real and relatable. Throughout the entire story, I just wanted more and more. And again, because of spoilers, we're not going to talk about it right now, but from start to finish, I was so happy getting caught up in the world building. For once, I felt like I was reading stuff written by human beings instead of overprocessed cardboard dialogue. Unfortunately, some folks don't agree with me, with some even saying that it was written by AI. Claims that are totally unfounded, I'd like to point out. If you want to call the dialogue cringe, that's whatever to me. Honestly, not everyone can like everything, but I was personally happy to finally be able to enjoy dialogue and storytelling. I was super happy with our partner Urbane. He reminded me a lot of Cat Noir from Miraculous Ladybug in all the best ways. He was kind of sassy, sometimes emotional, and really confident. I believe some of the writing is a bit different from Tawny, who's your partner if your character is male. The other two main side characters, Naveen and Lita, both have their own distinct personalities and don't get the grayscale side character special when it comes to their role in the main story. Some parts of their backstories and personalities were told through implicit details rather than explicit. Towards the beginning of the game, we're told that Naveen hangs around Hotel Z because his home life with his grandma isn't the best. We can assume that having formed Team MZ with Lita and Urbane gives him a nice place to go with safe friends, and it's really important to him. Besides living in Lumiose, Team MZ gives Naveen a reason to play the role he does in the story. Next, I was obsessed with doing the side quests, not just because I like doing things for completion. Even if the dialogue was short, like even just a couple of lines, you can tell someone took the time to write it. I almost felt like I was reading someone's fanfiction rather than Hollywood Hello Fellow Kids scripted dialogue. I think one of my favorite quests takes place in the museum. This is where we're asked to find 12 Spupa who have escaped their trainers. The Spupa are hanging walking around in the museum, and many of them are located in the actual exhibits. You can actually interact with all of the exhibits, and they have their own unique flavor text. The best part is that it features a Hisway exhibit, which is obviously a throwback to Legends Arceus. I sat in the museum for a long time, reading each of the nicely written notes about each item. My favorite was the Spupa by the portraits depicting the various hairstyles in Hisway. The text said something like, "Spupa's doing a great job showing off one of the hairstyles," and it's sitting in front of a picture of a bald person. That's so funny to me. The details put into the thought of the lore of the series was just so refreshing to me. It felt like whoever worked on this quest actually cared about what they were writing. Okay, moving on to the next thing. I told you I like to yap. There's this huge change in battle mechanics that ZA introduces, and that's real-time battling. However, as I'm sure you've seen, not only are there cooldowns for moves, but you get to move your Pokemon in real time. Hot take again, because apparently we're not allowed to appreciate a new mechanic introduced to a series that has never seen it before, since other series have been doing it for decades now. Some folks say that the system is clunky, but since I'm apparently an uncultured Pokemon shill, I had a really great time with it. I think it's so cool how I have to move around as well and not just my Pokemon. In the wild, alpha Pokemon will specifically target you, so your placement as well as the placement of your Pokemon matter. The battle system is really fun, at least to someone who pretty much solely plays Pokemon. I maybe think that if you're a real-time battling connoisseur, that maybe you'll find this system a bit lackluster. At least that's what I've seen some folks say. Some say it's a bit clunky and all you have to do is spam buttons, but I personally don't think that's necessarily true. I do have to say that sometimes the battle system doesn't work exactly as intended. Because of pathing, Pokemon can get stuck on various objects. Sometimes they'll even run off the edges of rooftops and just disappear. If you're fighting a trainer, they'll typically teleport back to the battle, but if it's a wild Pokemon, I'm sorry to say they're probably not coming back. So if Game Freak were to bring this battle system back for another Legends entry, I would hope that's something they manage to fix, because it can be a bit annoying. I saw folks really beefing about it, but I personally didn't have any serious issues with it, and I have nearly 50 hours into the game so far. Feel free to razz me for this if you want, lame, but go for it. I found ZA to be a bit difficult. Like, I kind of struggled with some of the trainer battles, and especially the ones towards the end of the game.
You're the reason that yellow paint exists in video games. You're the reason why games are too easy nowadays.
I mean, probably. I don't like playing games that are insanely hard. I have a much more enjoyable time playing games when I don't feel constantly stressed about every move I make. Plus, I'm deficient in IQ points since I bought this game in the first place. The difficulty caught me a bit off guard, but not in a bad way. I felt challenged. Granted, I'm sure I could have swept the entire game using one or two specific Pokemon. Someone probably figured that out within the first few days of the game being out, but that's boring to me. Since I wasn't min-maxing and I wasn't super over-leveled, the battles were a bit difficult. Not unfair or difficulty ROM hack levels of hard, but they still gave me a bit of a hard time. The thing that I found interesting about the scaling in ZA is that even if an opponent is 10 or so levels below you, certain moves can still hit you surprisingly hard, especially if they're able to use setup moves like Swords Dance or Calm Mind. It was honestly really refreshing. I think there's plenty to do in ZA, and I saw folks were saying there's nothing to do. There's plenty to do, trust me. Between all of the side quests, collecting the colorful screws by completing parkour, and finishing the Pokedex and its quests, all in all I spent over 45 hours doing all of the side quests and the main story. Speaking of the Pokedex, I do miss the Pokedex quest from Legends Arceus. I liked all the different things you had to do to complete the dex entry for each Pokemon. In the context of Legends ZA, I guess it would make less sense. In Arceus, Professor Laventon was working on the first Pokedex and we needed to collect all of the data, but ZA is more modern day, so it wouldn't necessarily need to work that way. So to kind of sum up this part of the review without any spoilers, as a big fan of Pokemon who really enjoys the series in its modern form, I have to say that I think Legends ZA is a really awesome game. I do think that Scarlet and Violet are still my favorite games, but that may change when the story DLC for ZA comes out in February. All of ZA's side characters are really memorable, the new Mega Evolutions are really fun, the dialogue and story writing is probably one of the best I've seen from a Pokemon game, and the new battle system is interesting and engaging. It would be an easy 10 out of 10 recommendation for me if there wasn't economic hardship going on just about everywhere. 70 USD for the Switch 2 version and then $30 for the DLC is a lot for a lot of folks. Even though some angrier fans may prattle on about the price, Pokemon Platinum released for $40 in 2008. If you plop it into an inflation calculator, that'll show you that that's around $60 today. I got around 45 hours of gameplay for my initial playthrough of ZA, which is around the typical amount of time I get from the base story for a Pokemon game. Scarlet and Violet gave me well over 100 hours to just complete the main game and DLC, and that doesn't include the insane amount of time I played doing terror raids and shiny hunting. If Legends EA can get me that kind of playtime with the DLC, I think I'll be able to wholeheartedly recommend it. So if so far you found that you enjoyed what I had to say and listening to me, yeah, it would be amazing if you could drop a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I love making videos for you all, and your support means so much. Okay, so I've only done a few reviews on plotlines before, and in one of them I spent most of the time dunking on Kieran. I hate that kid. I really don't care about the whole redemption arc either. I'm good. I'm not forgiving him for what happened with Terapagos. The story writing in Scarlet and Violet was so close to being the breakthrough in Pokemon's typical writing style, but it seemed like they didn't want to stray too far from the usual formula. But for Legends EA, they finally took that step. To me, it feels like someone on the English localization team wasn't a corporate drone and actually wrote some real feeling dialogue. I won't repeat myself, but when you first meet Tawny and Urbane at the beginning of the game, you can really see that the writers were trying to go for a much more personable archetype. I felt like Urbane could actually be a real person. With Nimona in Scarlet and Violet, it felt like she was meant to be more of that shonen, overzealous rival that we've seen in the Pokemon universe before. Not to say she's copy and pasted or anything, but it's just an archetype we've seen previously. Great thing about Legends EA is that if you haven't ever played X and Y, you don't really need to worry about knowing the story of the original beforehand. I should say that for this section, if you're a huge fan of Pokemon lore, you might want to sit this one out. I'm not knowledgeable enough to do some sort of meta commentary. You arrive in Lumiose, and basically as soon as you arrive, you're conscripted into Team MZ, a group made up of Urbane, Lita, and Naveen. We're then pushed to join the ZA Royale, where the most powerful trainers in Lumiose gather to try to climb the ranks, from Z all the way until A. I say ZA, but I'm pretty sure I've heard folks saying Z2A. That's too much. It's ZA. I've decided that. Now, the ZA tournament was created by Quartzartico at the request of AZ. I say request, but when a 3,000-year-old 9-foot-tall man tells you to do something, you just kind of have to accept that you have to do it. To level up in the tournament, you have to complete battles with challengers, which, if I'm being honest, a lot of the trainers below rank V were pretty forgettable, except Zachla Eternal Z. I won't ever forget that sad excuse of a cab driver. But after you do a special challenge match with Vinny from Quartzartico, you're bumped up to F rank. I saw that quite a few folks had issues with this. I guess I can see why. But at the end of the game, you get to enter into the Infinite ZA Royale, which is what I assume it would have been like to fight through ranks U through G. It would have been just a lot of unnecessary filler gameplay, in my opinion. I think it's better to have skipped the extra letters to get to see more of the awesome side characters sooner. The writers also made the jump in rank work with the story. Defeating Vinny shows that we're capable of wielding a Mega Bracelet, which is why we were promoted. It's after reaching rank F that the story gets kicked into overdrive. We get introduced to a lot of memorable side characters, some of them you wouldn't even expect. For example, Kanari's grandpa, Tarragon, is important to the story. I think it's so fun that they added in a supportive grandpa archetype. It's definitely not something you see very often in games as a whole. I would say that the story of ZA develops exponentially. Throughout the first 3/4 of the game, they're sprinkling in some important pieces of information about characters like Zygarde and Lysandra, but when you get to B rank, the story is like, hey, the tower in Centrico Plaza ain't looking right. And then before you know it, you're hearing about how Lysandra was trying to commit war crimes and AZ was a really bad, but also kind of a really good guy. And AZ is the reason why all this is happening in the first place. The old man is a weapons manufacturer, although if you look at him now, you probably wouldn't expect that. Or maybe you would. Maybe you're thinking, ah yes, the typical gentle old man WMD developer archetype. If you're not familiar with the weapons in this universe, you have the ultimate weapon, which was created by AZ. Initially, Kalos was in a war over 3,000 years ago. AZ had to send his prize Floette into battle, and she unfortunately passed away during the conflict. He then built the ultimate weapon to restore its life. He successfully revived Floette, but only by taking the life force from other Pokemon. Floette was brought back to life, but abandoned AZ after learning how he did it. Oh, and then AZ used the ultimate weapon to end the conflict in Kalos by nuking both sides. Guess that took care of that. AZ also built a weapon called Ange, which he intended to activate to provide eternal life so he could spend forever in peace with Floette, but he never felt it was the right time to use it. Ange was encased in the Prism Tower, and as the game progresses, we can see Quartzartico building up some sort of barricade around it, which I assume was their attempt to hide from the citizens of Lumiose that something terrible was probably about to happen. But when we're thinking about the player experience, the weapon explanations don't really come until much later in your playthrough. As far as the player is aware, for a good portion of the game, the driving force of the plotline is that there's rogue Mega Evolutions, and they can only be stopped by strong Mega Evolution users. As the player, you have a reason to stop rogue Mega Evolutions before you even learn anything about the more imperative plotline, because having strong, aggressive Pokemon just roaming freely isn't exactly safe for a large populated city. That's something that's touched on a bit too. Because of the influx of energy being released by Ange, more wild Pokemon have flocked to Lumiose. That's where Corsotico comes into play. They're the company that's currently tasked with installing wild zones around the city to keep the newly introduced wild Pokemon safely separated from the citizens. Honestly, up until the end, I believe they were the bad guys. Like, they were the ones causing Ange to reactivate. Even after you get the explanations from Grisham and AZ, I was pretty much like, nah, how is Corsotico involved? Unfortunately for my theory, Corsotico is actually only in charge of the urban redevelopment plan. This includes trying to move people back into the city. Apparently, the activation of a mega destruction device in someone's basement scared a bunch of citizens away. I can't imagine why though. Then after both us and Urbane reach rank A, something happens and Ange goes completely rogue. It basically explodes, throwing debris everywhere and causing a bunch of wild Pokemon to mega evolve. We work alongside Urbane to stop the tower, but as Urbane and Floette get to the top, Floette gets fused with Ange and it goes completely berserk. We team up with the side characters we met along the way from the ZA Royale, as well as Zygarde, to stop Hyper Rogue Ange Floette. Oh yeah, by the way, Zygarde has taken a liking to us and deemed us worthy to lead it. The final cutscenes are just so cool. I was in absolute awe watching how Zygarde defended Lumiose, because at the end of the day, Zygarde is what brought peace back to the city. I have to say that I definitely wasn't expecting so many explosions and beams of energy being thrown around. Mega Zygarde gets some sort of particle cannon looking thing, and that's also something I didn't see coming. I should say that we wouldn't have been able to make it to Zygarde without one of my favorite characters. I say one of my favorite because otherwise we'd be here for an eternity talking about them, so we'll just talk about Corbeau. This was kind of shocking to me because I don't normally like characters like him. The group he's a part of is literally a payday loan agency. Urbane ended up borrowing some money to shoot a commercial for Hotel Z. That's the one he asked us to star in at the beginning as soon as we enter Lumiose. Naturally, as most of us don't, he didn't read the fine print and was swiftly responsible for $1 million in interest. So initially we're led to believe that Corbeau is this evil loan shark, but as we complete tasks for him to help pay off some of the debt, we begin to realize that he's not really that bad. He's having us do good deeds and help out around the city, which makes sense given that when he was homeless as a kid, coming to Lumiose gave him a place to belong. So even though the Rust Syndicate is a very bougie organization now, Corbeau doesn't come from old money or anything. He actually asked Lysandra for a loan to jumpstart a bunch of businesses. Like, that's some pretty legit character building. I think my favorite cutscene with Corbeau was at the end when we needed to get to Zygarde and we had to enlist the help of all the high-ranking ZA Royale trainers we fought. When we team up with Corbeau, we need to scale a building to get to the roof, but there are no ladders around. So instead of giving up or wasting time, the Rust Syndicate builds a human ladder. When he realizes they're one person short to get to the top, Corbeau doesn't hesitate to throw himself up there. Then once we scale the building and he helps us up, he does this really sick drop backwards off the edge. That was just genuinely super cool and cinematic. Throughout the latter portion of the story, I found myself becoming extremely connected to Lumiose and all the characters I had been introduced to. And by the end of the game, I felt like I wanted to do nothing other than protect the city and the people in it. Like, to genuinely enter into the game at the start and have zero connection to the world whatsoever, and then by the end feeling like I would do anything to protect it is insane story writing. I care about all of the characters, no one felt out of place, and they all felt like they had thought put into their dialogue and development as the game progressed. To kind of get my final opinions on everything I talked about in this video, which I think at this point is probably one of the longest ones I've made, I really enjoyed Legend ZA. I hate the implications that are made by other fans of Pokemon about folks who are enjoying the way Pokemon exists in the present. I suppose you're entitled to your opinion just as much as I am, but I'm not sitting here calling folks names because they're enjoying something. If I like newer Pokemon, that doesn't make me a low IQ Disney adult that's destroying gaming. Just like everything in life, Legend ZA isn't perfect and there are always things that can be done to improve it. In my personal opinion, it's not an overly flawed piece of slop being sold to people who enjoy being scammed. It's a good Pokemon game, and if you enjoy Pokemon and can put aside the negativity surrounding the newer games, you'll probably find that you really like ZA. But hey, that's coming from someone who loves everything Pokemon. Wow, that was a really long video. I had a lot to say and I hope you enjoyed listening to me yap. If you find that you enjoyed this video and like Pokemon as much as I do, it would be amazing if you could consider dropping a like and subscribing to my channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you know when I release a new video. So yeah, thanks for spending this part of your day with me and I can't wait to see you again next time. Okay, bye!